Hello, welcome. My name's Mark Helm. I'm the author of Creating Wealth Through Self-Storage, and I'm the creator of the Self-Storage Quick Start Academy. And I help people who are getting in the self-storage business, and I help people who want to grow their self-storage business strategically do so in a way that creates true wealth and a fulfilling career. And right now, you are in episode 3 of a 4-part series that is called The Complete Guide to Creating Your Self-Storage Business Strategy. So we've talked about the 3 aspects of goal achievement or success and fulfilling on strategies that you create. And we got this from Tony Robbins, who's a master at goal achievement and fulfilling on visions that you create for yourself. And so the 3 parts are state, mental state. The second one is stories, mental stories we tell ourselves. And the third one is the strategy itself. You become master of those 3 aspects, then you will be someone who can fulfill on whatever you create for your business or any other aspect of your life. And last week we went very deep into mental state. The mental state is the environment which literally holds your business strategy. And if that mental state is powerful with lots of energy and a powerful mental state, then the possibility of you fulfilling on your business strategy for your self-storage business is increased. Now, what we found out is what all people do, including myself, is we immediately default to number 3, which is the strategy itself. Why? Well, because it's satisfying to the mind, it gives us something to focus on, and we've just never really been taught about mental states and stories too much. Plus, one very important thing is when you're focused on strategy, you're not focused on yourself. And when you're not focused on yourself, you really don't have to change. And human beings tend to avoid change in their life. So last week we went very deep into mental states. If you haven't watched that episode, stop now. Watch that first before you watch this, because that creates a background or a context for the work we're going to do today. Also, in January of 2017, 5 episodes ago, we had a 3-part series called the True Wealth Series, where we went deep into some of the stories that we tell ourselves about success and money. That would also be a good series of episodes to watch, not necessarily because they're so great, but because they give a background or a context for the content we're going to study today. That was the True Wealth series. And where I ended that True Wealth series was, I am amazed at the power of the human mind. It is one of the most powerful forces that there is. Why? Because it literally creates the reality that we live into. So how does this work? Well, usually something happens, then we have a feeling or an emotion about what happened. Then we have a dialogue with ourselves about what happened, mostly unconscious, but we tell ourselves, we have an internal dialogue and create a story or depiction of what we see happening and what we're feeling. And then we never question that story. That story that we tell ourselves becomes reality, and it becomes a filter through which we look. And then when we look out into the world through that story, we see evidence to validate that story, and very quickly. It doesn't at all occur like our dialogue or our story. It just occurs like, this is how the world is. This is how I am. And consider, it started very young. It started as soon as you learned to talk, as soon as you got language. And what's amazing is we don't even see it. We don't even relate to it like a story or like we created it. It just occurs to us like that's how the world is. Frankly, that's why 2 people watching the exact same event can both have different interpretations of what happened. Very often when the police interview witnesses to a crime scene, or any scene, what they find is there's many different stories or interpretations of what happened. Just an example of how the stories we create filter what we see in the reality that we see for ourselves. So how does this happen? Let me give you some examples. So I'll talk about my life. So I was adopted when I was 6 months old. Now at 6 months old, I wasn't talking a whole lot. I didn't have a strong ability to really process what was going on around me. All as a 6-month-old I felt was the experience of being abandoned. Even without words, that created a feeling or an emotion for me. Then I was adopted. So as I grew up, it became very, very important for me to be accepted, to be liked, first by my parents, and then as I got older by my peers and by groups. Now, I didn't realize it and I couldn't have put words to it, but my experience was if I wasn't liked or wasn't accepted, it was a very dangerous place for me. Like I had the experience of bad things happening, perhaps even dying if I wasn't accepted. I mean, it was an over-the-top kind of experience for me. So I did what was necessary to have you accept me and you like me. Now, I didn't realize it, but I had this story in the background running 24/7 all the time, and what it created was a need to be accepted and to be liked by people 24/7, always running. And if I had the experience that I wasn't, didn't even have to be real, I just had to experience that I wasn't or that I was being rejected, my reaction was fear, terror. Now, as I began to do work on myself as an entrepreneur, I began to realize and see this. But until I did that work, that story was running in the background and literally controlled how I experienced being accepted or liked by people. You want to go on a date with me? You want to invest your money with me? You want to be my partner? Till I distinguish that, the odds are probably no. So more stories. My adoptive father grew up very wealthy, and then his family lost everything in the Depression. And of course, he had his own set of stories, but the story that I was born into, or the family story and conversation that I was adopted into, was that money's hard to get, and when you get it, you better hold on to it because you never know what's around the corner and something bad is probably going to happen that will take your money. There is a lot of family history of Helms who have had a lot of wealth and then died broke. So that was the story I was born into. So for my father, winning, being successful, and making lots of money was extremely important to him. Now, as a kid, it was important for me to be accepted by my father. So what do you think I did in order to have my father accept me? Well, I became someone who would win, and literally I had to win at everything I did. Now, as a business owner and entrepreneur, you know that you fail often in business. Early on in my business career, it did not occur like, okay, so what can I learn from this? It occurred like sheer terror, utter failure. Something bad was going to happen. I had to always be on top. Now, do you want to invest money with me? You want to be my partner? I was actually fairly successful at whatever I took on in life, but I had all these stories, undistinguished, running in the background, controlling, dictating the life experience I was going to have. So whatever business or enterprise that I created, whatever endeavor I took on, all my activities were filtered through those undistinguished stories. We all have them. It's not personal to you. We are born, and this is how the human brain is wired. There's nothing wrong with it. The power is to distinguish what those stories are so that they don't have control. Here's what I want you to hear. The moment you distinguish a story that you've created around any area of your life, the moment you distinguish that, it no longer has control. It's no longer running in the background. It's out front in the light of day. Now, if that story serves you, keep it. If it doesn't, replace it. How? Well, let's talk about that. So what I've discovered is when I'm working with people in the self-storage business and creating their business and growing their business, we can all create great strategies. But what I've seen is, and I spend most of my time with people on, is not so much the strategy, but it's usually the stories that they have running in the background or their mental state. That's where we spend at least half of the work is on those areas, because those will dictate how successful you're going to be implementing your strategy. Our lives are run by the stories we create. Your business is influenced and to a large degree controlled, can only expand as far as the story you have about yourself and success and about business. I'm going to go through some steps, easy steps for you to distinguish what your story is. Then, if you decide you want to change that story, I'll show you how to do it real quick. So let's go through the steps of distinguishing what the story is. So something happens. A deal gets jammed up again. You just lost your 4th deal in a row. You've had to extend it 3 times. Something's going on and you're unable to close. Stop the action. When you start feeling that tense feeling or that sinking feeling, stop. Ask yourself, step 1, is this a familiar feeling? If it is, then go to step 2. When was the last time I experienced this? What was going on? What was happening? When was the last time I experienced it? Now, the tendency is to kind of get all in the story and dwell in it. Don't. Just identify. When was the last time this happened? Oh, this happened last time I argued with this person. This happened the last deal that I lost. That's when that happened. So identify it. It's a familiar feeling. It's happening over and over again. I can even tell you the last time. Step 3, ask yourself, when was the very first time I can remember ever experiencing this? Now, this might take something. Might have to sit down, but think, when was the earliest time I can remember ever having experienced this? Now, it doesn't have to be the very first time. Odds are it won't be. And another hint, it probably happened when you were very young, and it probably happened around some authority figures. So go back to the earliest time you can remember that experience. It doesn't have to be the exact moment, and you don't even have to remember the experience perfectly correct. Odds are you won't. But just remember the earliest time you can remember having that particular experience. What was happening? What was going on? And the last step in distinguishing the story is, in that earliest experience you can remember what was happening and what did I say to myself. Now, odds are you were probably a young person, so use the language that a 4 or a 6 or a 9-year-old would use. Don't use big words, don't intellectualize it. Just remember the event and remember, what would you have probably said to yourself about the situation and about you. Let me give you an example. Deals falling apart. I get a tense feeling. Stop the action. When was the last time I felt this? Last time I felt this was when I lost the last deal 2 months ago. When's the earliest time I can remember having this experience? When's the earliest time? I can remember first, second, third, don't remember the grade, bringing home a report card with C's on it. And I can remember the sinking feeling that once again, I've disappointed everyone. I've disappointed my parents. I can remember that vividly. What did I probably say to myself? Well, I probably said something like, I'm a ne'er-do-well. I never quite get there. I almost do good, but not quite. I must be a bad person, or I'm a disappointment. That's probably what I would have said to myself. Now, what happens is, as a human being, it's hard to be with, especially if you're 6 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old. That's hard to be with. So what happens is that immediately goes into the background. You don't want to be with that, but that story's still there and it disappears, but it's running. It's running the machinery. And then as you relate to events out in the world and as you relate to yourself in events out in the world, that story's running, and the expectation, consciously or not, is that you're almost going to get there. So you've now distinguished a story. Does that story serve you? Some of our stories do serve us. If that particular story would not serve me, is that something I want to change? Yes. Why? Because it doesn't serve me, especially if I'm creating a self-storage business. How do you change it? 3 steps, not 4 here, 3. Step number 1, is it true? Just ask yourself, is that story true? Now, very often, the first temptation is to say yes, especially if there's a lot of emotion around the story, if it's a charged story for you. But ask yourself, is it really true? Hint, the answer is almost always no. But if it really occurs, like ingrained, and it really is the reality you see, which sometimes does happen, ask yourself this: is it possible I'm misinterpreting it? Is it possible I'm making a mistake that this is true? But that's step 1. Is it true? Step 2. Does this story, which is not necessarily true, serve me, and do I want to keep it? Simple yes or no answer. If it's no, then step 3. What's another story I could have told myself? Well, I could have created any story. I could have created the story that when I fall short, I never give up until I succeed. I mean, I could have created that. I didn't. I created something else, but I could have created that one. That story serves me a lot better than the old one. So let's create that story. When I falter, when I fall short, I never give up until I succeed. Now, why would I create that story? Well, because that's a story that empowers me to do what I'm up to in my storage business. We're not looking for the truth here. The truth is, whatever you say becomes your reality. So create something powerful that serves you. That's all this is about. Distinguishing stories that are running in the background that don't serve you and replacing them with stories that do. So my invitation is print this off, practice this, and pretty soon it will become second nature to you. Now, here's the thing. We're entrepreneurs. We're business owners. By definition, we have to live a self-examined life if we want to succeed at what we're up to. Why? Because not living a self-examined life allows all the undistinguished stories, all the undistinguished baggage that we've had, and everyone has it. It's not just you. It's not personal to you. All of us do. It's part of being alive. But by distinguishing it and doing the work on ourselves and living self-examined lives, we create a space for us and our business to grow. Now, you got in the self-storage business because you wanted to create something for yourself and for your family. Odds are, initially it revolves around money, creating wealth and creating money for yourself. Soon what I realized was one of the main benefits of being a business owner and owning my own business is the opportunity to live a self-examined life and to be someone who creates the life that I live into. Look, your family depends on you doing this. Your business depends on you doing this. Your partners depend on you doing this. Even your customers and your employees need a business owner who is constantly expanding what's possible for the business and for their life. That's one of the main benefits of living the lifestyle of someone who runs their business and lives into a created life. Now, what does all this have to do with storage? Everything. Everything. The success of your self-storage business literally becomes a function of how self-aware you are as a business owner. And one of the benefits I never realized, but as I look back, I begin to see it now. By living this lifestyle, by being someone who's constantly working on myself, someone who's constantly growing, I've gotten to the point where I don't tolerate anything in my life very long that isn't empowering and doesn't support what I'm up to and whatever I'm doing. I just won't tolerate it anymore. I will do whatever's necessary to become empowered, to get away from or get out of my life anything that disempowers me. And what a beautiful way to live. I'm not perfect at it, but it's getting easier and easier as I go. In fact, I've created for myself the 2-minute rule. If anything I'm experiencing disempowers me, upsets me, creates tension in my life, I will allow myself 2 minutes to dwell in it, and then I do the work to alter it. I just shared with you 7 steps you can use to alter your life and your business. So thank you very much. My name's Mark Helm. I'm the author of Creating Wealth Through Self-Storage, and I'm the creator of the Storage World Analyzer. Storage World Analyzer is a financial analysis tool that's specifically designed for the self-storage industry. And we are upgrading it, releasing version 2 within the next month. And it is a much improved, very powerful program. I cannot wait to show it to you. Next week, we're going to go into the strategies, how to, now that you've gotten control of your mental state or know how to improve your mental state, now that you have the ability to distinguish disempowering stories that are running in the background, now we can focus on what are the actual strategies you can create for your self-storage business. I'll see you next week, and thank you very much.